Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to the Liberty Beacon Special, and I am your host, Roger Landry, and this show is being brought to you on TLB TV by the Liberty Beacon Project. And today we have a special guest, someone who has some great information for the Liberty Beacon Project, somebody who works well with the Liberty Beacon Project, and a source of information that you just don't find from the average individual. I'm talking about Gregory Ford, and this is a gentleman who has a batch of experience both in the intel and the counter-intel fields, as well as some homeopathic and some MD experience. So as you can tell, he's a very well-rounded individual. Today, what we're going to be looking for and what we're going to be tapping is his information, his intel information, and his co-intel information, counterintelligence. And with that, we're going to be able to bring to you some things that really, really ought to have your hair standing on end. We realize today that we have just gone through probably the most bastardized election that any of us have seen in our lifetimes. And I would dare say stand out against any election we've had, period, in the history of this country. We have a huge liberal movement that has pushed back against the duly elected president. We've never seen this before. We have seen 5 different efforts, whether it is by riots in the streets funded by George Soros, whether it is by recounts, whether it is by trying to make the election illegitimate via foreign intrusion into our democratic process. We have seen 5 different scenarios whereby these liberals have done everything they can to try and destroy the credibility of a duly elected or a president-elect. What we are not seeing is that what's going on behind the scenes when we talk about the intelligence communities and we talk about who controls these communities is that this is not over. You must understand that Trump has not been inaugurated yet. So we still have several days where a huge monkey wrench can be thrown into the gears here. And even after that, when you have an intel chief stating that there are ways, the intel community has ways of getting back at Trump. This was a veiled threat that was put out on national television. So what everybody here needs to understand is that democracy and our ability to have free and independent elections whereby, as in our entire history, okay, once the election has happened, a peaceful transfer of power goes forward, and we run with a brand new president. All of this is up in the air. All of this is in danger, and if you feel that danger is past, nothing could be further from the truth. So let me bring my guest in. How are you today, Gregory?
I'm fine, Roger, and I'm eager to get this information out and these warnings out. Thank you for having me on your show, by the way. You know, in these troubling times, it's good to know that somebody like you is out there willing to bear the torch, or the Liberty Beacon as it is. So, where would you like to start? We've got everything across the board, and we've got a rogue intelligence agency that's getting ready to remove our elected president. And if you don't think that they won't use force, you can use me as the example anybody listening should look up my name before they even go on further with this show. And that's look up Frank Gregory Ford and what happened to me when I stood up and did the right thing in an intelligence environment. So I'm ready to go, Roger, when you are.
Well, as I said to everybody, and I have documented and I've chronicled all of the roadblocks that the liberals, okay, and again, we're talking about something that's floating up to the surface. What you're going to discuss is the rest of this iceberg, the 90% that's hidden away from public eye. What I have discussed and what I have chronicled, and anybody who listens to any of the shows I do know my background, and my background is that I spent 30 years either in or working for the DoD in military programs. So, but what I'm trying to tell people here is we have a situation right now where we have seen a mass liberal movement excited by fake news into a situation where they are willing to forego a duly democratically elected president for the chaos that they're being pushed to. But again, Greg, what I want you to talk about is the 90% that's hidden, the 90% that people don't see. And this, of course, is the intelligence community. And for anybody who doesn't understand this, the immense power that this community exercises not only over the U.S. government, but governments globally. Have I got that wrong, Gregory?
No, you're tracking perfectly, Roger. And I'm more than glad to talk about all the programs that have taken place, that have compromised our war efforts, have compromised our anti-terrorism efforts to actually become profitable. Okay,
right. And with about 55 minutes, we really have to focus on the current situation and what you're aware of and the warnings you feel need to be put out.
You bet. So let's get to it.
Roll with it.
Okay. Now, what I need to point out is a couple of things. My 30 years of intelligence included electronic intelligence collection and human intelligence collection, as in human spying. So, and my first job, fortunately, when I was 18 years old, was presidential security for Richard Milhouse Nixon. And I'll tie all this in, but what's important now is to understand where we are at. Okay, we are at a very precarious position with our government and the people controlling the government. The electorate, the taxpayer, the citizen of this country have been reduced to a incidental coefficient. Okay, coefficient in this equation. So, looking at this right now, in the last few days, we've had an accusation against the other superpower in the world, Russia. Okay, it's kind of teetering right there. What does Russia have to do with any of this? Well, here's the first thing. Wasn't there somebody who was a expert on our computer systems that worked for the Bush family cartel, the Bush corporate cartel, as in the Carlyle Group, as in Booz Allen? That person is Ed Snowden. Where is he now? He's sitting in Russia. All right, he is sitting in Russia. He knows how the corporate America and the voting America actually deal with their high-speed, high-tech systems, as in the Democratic DNC hacking. All right, he knows what is going on, and of course we can't have a voice from the wilderness saying, "Oh no, there's no such thing as legitimate hacking in this case," because everybody has hacked the DNC. So we can't tell the American public that right now, because that really smells bad. And on top of everything else, we have a very, very frightened intelligence agency that is facing the fact that Vladimir Putin actually has the complete reconstruction, forensic reconstruction of what really happened on 9/11. All right, his spy satellites recorded every single incident of what happened on 9/11. All right, I don't think.
Hold on one second, okay? When you say that, let me bring to the people's attention, and then I'll let you continue. And I apologize for jumping in. When when Greg says they have satellite, okay, information, one of the things most of you people don't understand is that our government, especially our military, have practiced the handoff of planes and their transponders for quite a few years, and they're very, very good at it, meaning that a plane reaches a certain point, another plane flies over it, literally, okay, so that via the radar, it looks like it's one plane now. One plane shuts off its transponder, the other plane turns on a transponder that has the exact same signal. When they part, you still see the one plane, and what's being tracked from that point appears to be the original plane. So not only do you have the electronic information, but you also have the physical satellite tracking of these aircraft. And this was not planned on or planned for by those who perpetrated 9/11. Please continue. I just felt they needed to know this, Gregory.
And within the last few days, we have found out that the Russians aren't the bumbling, stumbling, decaying superpower dying in its own armor that our own intelligence agencies have been telling us. All right, we just had virtually our entire fleet disabled. They're not talking about it, but guess where 10 of the 12 aircraft carriers that we own that are protecting the United States and are in charge of projecting power in all 6 oceans, guess where they're at? They're tied up next to each other. They are tied up next to each other, folks.
Now you're coming into an area where I have a little bit of expertise, because what I did was electronic surveillance, counter surveillance, sonar, radar, ECM communications. So yes, that's a sterling point, Greg.
And the issue with that is, and I think you'll agree, Roger, I think everybody that's read a book in the last 20 years has heard of Pearl Harbor. The same thing was happening in Pearl Harbor. And so everybody should be saying, well, why are these aircraft carriers tied up next to each other? It's because a few days ago, 2 Russian MiGs flew over, 2 jet fighters flew over a couple of our ships, made one pass, and all the electronics went dead. Okay, on that ship, on that large, actually the whole fleet went dead. All right, and what they realized was that this is a new technology the Russians have had for we don't know how long, and they were able to completely paralyze with just one plane flying over and emitting a beam and knocking out the entire set of electronics on our, quote, state-of-the-art aircraft carriers. All right, those are the centerpiece of each fleet, is the aircraft carrier. So here we are, basically defenseless. All right, that's what the intelligence agencies don't want you to know. Now, jumping horses here, we have a situation where hacking. The Russians have been accused of hacking. Okay, well, subject near and dear to my heart, as I'm the owner of several anti-hacking systems patented in our U.S. Patent Office, and I can tell you that if the Russians really wanted to hack us, they wouldn't leave any evidence that they were there. All right? They know what they have been doing, as I have worked with the Russians before and the Ukrainians. I have worked with them. They know what they're doing.
Can I jump in here for a second, please, Greg? What most people don't understand is the footprint that they claim to have discovered is, in fact, okay, a piece of malware that was developed by the Soviets, but has been on the market for almost a decade and is available to just about any hacker on the planet. So it may be that what was seen to have a Russian footprint. That What they're not telling you is that that footprint could have come from any of 10,000 hackers across the planet who have been using this excellent malware for almost a decade.
The name of the company that anybody can go to, and then have been going to it to get even passwords, is called Leak Source. Everybody knows that, all right? So I seriously doubt if the CIA, which basically is not assigned the task of electronic security and intelligence security, could figure this out. All right, it's the job of the NSA, and I don't know anybody that's heard the NSA even mentioned in this little fiasco. All right, so we have here now is basically a finger pointing session about why justification or trying to justify the fact that Donald Trump was elected. Viably and pointedly, he was elected. Now, the other issue is, and we need to go back a few decades here, is we're looking at a coup, okay? This is a directed coup against the United States. And it's our own people that are doing it. Afraid so, all right? When I was on presidential security for Richard Nixon, the first time I heard that a coup had taken place was an attempted coup right before the assassination of the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. The irony is that no, it wasn't a lone gunman, an assassin who was deranged. No, it wasn't. It was a CIA operative who supposedly assassinated the president. All right? Yes, Lee Harvey Oswald, folks, worked for the CIA. And guess who was in charge of the CIA at that time? I don't care what anybody says, it was George H.W. Bush. All right? George H.W. Bush led the first coup against the United States by having our president assassinated.
Weren't there ties between Oswald and the Russians as well?
You've got it.
Yeah.
You have got it. And where did I hear this? First of all, I heard it when I was on presidential security. And here we go again. We had something where Richard Nixon, that much vilified former boss of mine and our former president, tried to remove the weapons of mass destruction. Okay, that's a very important acronym here. Weapons of mass destruction, WMD. All right. He tried to remove the nuclear threat, and he tried to remove the chemical warfare threat. All right, both lethal killers. Guess who was in charge largely of that decision to?
Can I say? I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Okay, it was George H.W. Bush who had the deciding vote. He refused to limit weapons of mass destruction in the world. And then he turned right around, the clever little devil that he is, he turned right around and made one of the most dangerous companies in the world that sells weapons of mass destruction. It's called the Carlyle Group.
Gee, wasn't he running the CIA at the time? Oh my God! Is this a coinky-dink? Oh, come on.
And now the other irony is, then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he becomes ambassador to China. Yes, that China. All right. So we have a connection going on way back, and we have a coup happening in America. All right. Our president was shot down in the streets of Dallas, and there is a picture of George H.W. Bush standing there supervising. All right. What do I need to say? But I'll say a lot more. All right. Now, a few weeks ago, as I mentioned to you, Roger, I spoke to somebody who has since passed away mysteriously, but he was an accountant for the Carlos Marcello organized crime syndicate. He informed me that, yes, that it was George H.W. Bush actually in charge of the entire assassination as it was formulated in New Orleans. And there were a couple of issues that were bothering the organized crime syndicates and the oil syndicates, as in George H.W. Bush, that required the removal of the president. It didn't matter that he was the president of the United States. He was affecting their business. Now, I need to point out at this point, this conjunction, that George H.W. Bush had a headquarters, an oil company headquarters in some place called Medellin, Colombia. All right. Hopefully that message just carried through, Roger, because that's important. The importation of cocaine was started in Medellin, Colombia.
Well, anybody who's done any research on the CIA knows that they are the biggest traffickers of heroin and cocaine on the planet. And anybody else who's done any research knows that GW's dad, okay, we're talking about not the elderly George W. and not his clown of a son who also became president, but their dad was also brought up on several charges that seem to have evaporated for giving aid and comfort to the enemy by supporting both the Nazi movement and the United States during World War II. Financially.
And never forget this, for the people of America that are listening, it's just this simple. Prescott Bush was in charge of the production of Cyclone B, which he licensed to the
yes.
IG Farben Company of Germany. IG Farben. Prescott Bush licensed and was paid royalties for Cyclone B. Okay? Now, this is near and dear to me. Okay? Cyclone B was used to exterminate millions of Jews in concentration camps. That's when they talk about the gas chamber, that's what was used, folks. It was a delousing agent, and then they found it killed people just as quickly and just as fast and efficiently. So we have here a producer of weapons of mass destruction who made a fortune and was one of the largest investors in the Rhineland-Westphalia Electric Corporation, okay, of Germany. That's why the power plants at the Ruhr, in the Ruhr River Valley in Germany weren't ever bombed. It was our own people saying, don't bomb them, all right, so they can make money. Rhineland-Westphalia, RWE, and I challenge anybody to that observation. But in the meantime, Junior, okay, George H.W. Bush, all right, that's where he learned his trades of war profiteering. And that's what the Bushes do. They war profiteer. They make money off of war. You don't have wars, you don't make money. All right, so then what happens next is not only do the Americans have a president assassinated, all right, but surprise, the next president, Richard Nixon, okay, he's against weapons of mass destruction sales, and he actually has the audacity to stop the Saudis from implementing an embargo with the assistance of Aristotle Onassis. All right. Well, what we have, okay, is something like this: is guess who was best buddies with the Saudis? Pretty much like right now, okay, pretty much like the folks that just paid for the attack on 9/11 and the World Trade Center. Okay, yes, that same Bandar Bush, Prince Bandar Bush, and the Bushes. All right, so we now have another coup coming into place. Richard Nixon saved America from a massive oil embargo, and so what did that do? And he actually has the audacity to stop the attempt to stop the production of weapons of mass destruction, which the Carlyle Group, by the way, produces. Okay, so he has to go. Anybody that's heard of Watergate? Guess what, folks? He didn't. Richard Nixon did not do it. Okay, can you imagine a bunch of high-level CIA operatives screwing up the Watergate break-in like they did? They were supposed to get caught. All right. Nixon knew that something like that was going to happen, and he knew the Bushes were going to do it. All right.
And all of this is absolutely paramount to setting the stage. But again, we have to understand where we are today, and with the limited time, we need to bring the focus up to what's actually happening today. Let me jump in here and add something else, and I want you to take this football and run with it because I know you're eminently qualified for this. Where do we sit today? We sit with a president-elect who says, I would much rather sit down and talk with the Russians. I would much rather bury the hatchet. I would much rather move away from the prospects of a global war. Everything you've set up to this point, everything you've discussed to this point is how many people make massive amounts of money and gain massive amounts of control by controlling and perpetuating warfare. So when you've got a president that says, I'm not going to mess around with these people in Syria, we don't have to. I'm not going to mess around with these Russians. We don't have to. What you're doing is you're telling these people who massively profit from war that their profits are going to drop like a freaking rock. And when you do that, you challenge their authority and they move forward like they did with Kennedy, like they did with Nixon, like they've done with several other presidents, but not on such a high profile. Now, if I've got this wrong, tell me, Greg, but now we need to move a little bit closer to what's happening today because we're almost halfway through the show.
All right. It's okay. I'll try to simplify this.
Did I get it right?
Yes, you did, and I'm tracking. Okay. I'm going to get it out for your listeners one way or the other. All right. In the Watergate hearings, I was sitting in the Western White House, San Clemente, California, and we watched somebody, a little gal, 27 years old, by the name of Hillary Rodham, get up there and start making announcements about how Richard Nixon should be destroyed without any legal representation. Hillary Rodham Clinton. Okay, yes, that Hillary Rodham Clinton, all right, who's in the news. Okay, so guess what? All right, that was the beginning of a, quote, as they say in Casablanca, a beautiful friendship, all right, between the Bushes, who were trying to destroy Mr. Nixon, and Hillary Rodham Clinton, who then proceeds to marry some joker by the name of William Jefferson Clinton, and they proceed to set up the #1 importation agency for cocaine, for the cocaine importation agency, all right, in Arkansas, and that beautiful friendship continues to today.
Wait a minute, cocaine importation agency. Are you like referring to the CIA here? Come on. Isn't that blatant?
So what we have here now, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit. There's a lot more meat to this, but when I'm doing it jumping ahead. Guess who has now threatened a major form of income for the agency and for the Bushes? All right, it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump had the audacity to get outvoted, okay, or get Hillary Clinton outvoted and defeated. All right, there goes a major form of income for the last 30 years that was unbeatable. All right, Donald Trump just threatened that. Does anybody out there, let me ask this, are they stupid enough to think that the agency is going to allow Donald Trump to continue as president of the United States? Sorry, they are not. Okay, this is what's going to happen, folks. And Donald Trump, if he's smart and if he listens to this message, the first thing he'll do is he will pull the person that actually won the election for him. All right, it wasn't his staff, it was Julian Assange. Get Julian Assange out of that embassy in London before the agency can kill him. Get him out and put him on your staff. All right, I would suggest remove the head of the CIA and put Julian Assange in there. All right, it would actually become efficient. By the way, does anybody think that the agency has been successful at anything other than leading coups against the United States? They haven't. Their idea of victory is Tehran and Guatemala, Iran and Guatemala. No.
Okay.
So
You just made another huge point that I've got to jump in on. You said the CIA may operate more efficiently if Julian Assange, which I'm not crazy about that idea, but I do understand why you said it. It makes sense. Were put in charge of the CIA. Anybody listening to this needs to understand another fact that I'm sure Greg's going to roll with, and that is, since in the 10 years, almost 10 years now, that Julian Assange's WikiLeaks has been up and operating, all of the information they have been put out has never been challenged. Well, you might think it hasn't been, but it has been. It has gone over by a fine-tooth comb, but yet you have never heard anybody step up to say that information is wrong. The only intel outlet on this planet in the last 10 years that has given you 100% provable and accurate information, believe it or not, has been WikiLeaks.
Absolutely, Roger. Completely. And that is what defeated Hillary Clinton. Yes, Hillary Clinton was counting on something called Choice Point to pull off this election for her. All right. Now, if Obama, who we've had for the last 8 years, Obama wasn't a CIA Manchurian candidate coming from a intelligence agency family, all right, she would have won that round. All right, she would have beaten him soundly. Afraid not. She didn't know who she was attempting to run in this race against. But sorry, Donald Trump isn't CIA, and that's why Hillary Clinton thought she had this one in the bag.
You're right. Did you know that there is actually on the internet, if you go looking for it, a discussion that was held, and it is in print, in the Soviet Union in the 1980s, where they stated that a black American would rise to the presidency and he would be an agent for the intel sources of the planet.
Absolutely. And if you don't believe this
is in Russia.
Where his mother worked. Okay? Obama's mother. Find out where she worked. Okay? Really worked. All right? Find out what she was doing in Indonesia with Sukarno. All right, so that will dispel any fictional fantasies about his original beginnings. I mean, talk about not having a birth certificate. Guess who provided the one he came up with? And they didn't even do a good job. I mean, when I found out he was, quote, born in Hawaii, I thought, and my tax dollars can't even produce a good forged birth certificate by the agency.
Well, not only that, but you got to understand, when a president who has to be open to the American public has to be vetted. He is the very first president to sit in the White House for 8 years who was never vetted congressionally. The day he gets elected, they spend $3 to $4 million to seal every single record, educational records, Social Security records, everything from public eye. That should have sent red flags up everywhere. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. Now, by the way, you mentioned something about having reservations about Julian Assange. All right. Let me point this out.
No. I'm not saying I have reservations about Julian Assange. What I said was I have reservations about him being appointed to head the CIA simply because there's so many brain-dead people in this country that the mainstream media have convinced that he is a traitor to this country, that we'd probably see a big backlash to that. I, for one, have immense faith in Julian Assange.
The important thing is first of all, Trump has to purge the CIA of all the neocon Bush agents. All right, he said it. He's threatened it. He has to do it if he wants to survive. And I don't mean survive politically. Forget that. Okay, he's a billionaire. They're not going to threaten him with taking his paycheck. Okay, no, they're going to blow his head off. All right, you know, I mean, the Kennedy family would have testified to that. That's how they do deal with issues like that. Just ask John F. and just ask his brother Bobby. Okay, they'll blow his head off. All right, can you imagine the Julian Assange in charge of the agency and then trying to have something like that happen? Ain't gonna happen. He's the safest person, to run the agency there is. All right, and surprise, we'll actually get some real intelligence too. Imagine that.
I don't know if it's real intelligence, although again, I understand why you use the word. What we'll actually get is the truth, because we need to understand that the director of the CIA, Casey, in 1983, in a meeting with the president, stated, and this quote flies everywhere, and you can't even bust this on whatever it is, Snopes or whatever. This guy quoted to the president in a briefing, "We will know that our program of disinformation has succeeded when everything the American people believe is false." I dare you to look that up on your computer, on any search engine. You will find this is the head of the CIA telling the president that. That backs up everything you're saying here, Greg.
Absolutely. William Casey was the person who completely subjugated the agency, although it didn't need much subjugating. I admit that right now. But he was the one who said, okay, we need boutique intelligence collection. Boutique as in, what, Mr. President, do you want the American public to think? All right. And so this goes back to a situation that I'm involved in, and this happened in 2001. 2001 was 9/11. In July of 2000, I was briefed by an intelligence group. I was in Arizona at the time, and the intelligence group said, that was briefing me, said there is going to be an attack on, in the next 18 months. They didn't say 9/11. They said the next 18 months. And it is going to be directed against the World Trade Center. It's going to have two groups of, quote, Al-Qaeda operatives. And they're also going to hijack planes and fly them into select targets in the Washington, D.C. area. All right. So does this sound familiar to anybody or any of your listeners, Roger? Guess what? It was true. Every single thing they said. And do you know who the first group to attack them was? It was the CIA. This was a military intelligence operation called Able Danger. Look that up. Able Danger, led by Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer. All right? He was the one who gave us the warning. And then 2 weeks ago, I was informed by some of my fellow former intelligence operatives that there was a woman who was the liaison between the CIA and Iraq. It was Iraq warning us, sending multiple warnings that we would be attacked on 9/11. You know what happened to the woman when she informed the CIA about this? She was arrested and held incommunicado on an Air Force base, all right, without speaking a word to anyone. And this is the part I learned in Iraq, was the Iraqis asked about her, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And they said, look, they actually had to intervene with our government and the CIA to get her out of that prison, okay, that Air Force prison, because she had sounded the alarm, and I had sounded the alarm, and Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer had sounded the alarm on the 9/11 attack. It would happen. 8 separate intelligence agencies informed us. Guess what? It just came out a month ago that yes, indeed, the Saudis had indeed, with the support of the Bush family, the same Bush family that was supporting Hillary Clinton, okay, they authorized the attack and the payment by Saudi Arabia for the 9/11 attack. There are now 9,000 separate lawsuits against Saudi Arabia as a result. Okay? And on top of everything else, the weapons of mass destruction brought to you by George H.W. Bush. Look at my court case. I want everybody to look at my court case. The court case number is 14-15050. You will see what I'm saying on your show, Roger, is exactly the truth, that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Guess who sold those weapons of mass destruction? That was WMD. It was the Carlyle Group, and it was the Bush family. All right, the Bush family started Carlyle.
You also have to understand that the gassing, the gas bombs that were used against the Iranians in the Iraq-Iranian war, which went on for a very long time and killed a lot of people, were supplied by the United States, and more than likely those gas bombs were supplied by the Carlyle Group.
Yes, and the Anfal campaign against the Kurds, as directed by a former, an employee of George H.W. Bush when he was with the CIA. Okay, the CIA was actually the employer of Saddam Hussein. That's why we sold.
Agreed. Oh yeah.
Restricted weaponry that the Senate had said under no circumstances are to be sold to anybody, be transferred to anyone, because they are so dangerous. The VX, I'll elaborate on this. The P400 1,000-pound converted bomb casing, the VX/GF, that yes was dropped on 200,000 dead Kurds. They can't be wrong that it does work in the Anfal campaign in the village of Halabja. All right, and you're speaking about the Delta. Okay, that was called the Shat al-Rab waterway attack on the Iranian armed forces by Saddam Hussein using these P400 converted bomb casings, and it probably killed close to 1 million Iranian soldiers.
Yes.
Who cares about Iran having weapons mass destruction when America has them, and they'll sell them to anybody that's got the money for them, and they do, and they did. You know, who cares if Iran has it?
You're not talking about things like the phosphorus bombs that the Israelis are using and stuff like that, are you? No, we couldn't be talking about that. No. And by the way, I'm getting a lot of inquiry now, Roger, from different quarters about the nuclear detonators that were shipped via Halliburton Logistics. Okay, does that ring a bell with anybody? And Dick Cheney, those nuclear detonators that were designed in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Dick Cheney's as dirty as the Bushes are.
The first executive order by George W. Bush was to redesign nuclear detonators to detonate dirty bomb material. And if somebody hasn't notified Valerie Plame, they should. Valerie Plame had her whole life destroyed and her whole career destroyed, she and her husband, by simply saying that there was something going on when she was with the CIA. There was something going on with the dirty bomb material, fissile material in Iraq. And next thing you know, she is being drummed out of and called a fraud, called a phony, out of the CIA. There's that damn CIA again. What is it about these people? I mean, they will do anything to go from GS-14 to GS-15, won't they? Including renditioning me, strapping me to a stretcher, torturing me, on that stretcher, when I filed charges about torture, and when I stated that, yes, there were weapons of mass destruction, 29 of them to be exact, all right, that were discovered. I discovered them, and I did it with the commanding officer of the Iraqi fighter bomb wing in Balad. Okay, now I was strapped to a stretcher when I reported war crimes, and I reported the weapons of mass destruction. All right, so the agency certainly made sure that I was covertly abducted, tortured, and flown out of Iraq. And by the way, officially, I'm still in Iraq. Okay, that's a question I'd like to address when Donald Trump gets into office. I would like to send him a message saying that I would like to find out when I can come home from Iraq. All right.
All right, look, we're down to 15 minutes. We have got some great information here. And you built a phenomenal foundation as to why these rogue intelligence agencies, and you know, you and I have discussed this before. I think it's absolutely a total destruction of words and terms to call them intelligence agencies, because in my eyes, the one thing they definitely don't demonstrate very much of is intelligence, especially lately with so much of what they're trying to do covertly being, I don't know, bandied across the internet like so much rag news from something like the Enquirer. And at this point, I think I'm actually, bruising the Enquirer and committing, I don't know, just putting them in a bad light when we compare them to the CIA. But we really need, what I want you to focus on now, please, okay? And this is what we need to get out because you have this information. Talk about the dangers we are presented with now. In the last 15 minutes, let's discuss where do we stand, what are the possibilities, and we're not here telling everybody that all is lost, woe is me, put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. We're not telling you that. What we are saying is the best weapon against covert actions is to make them known, to get the information out, to make as many people aware as possible, because when you shine the light on them, they're like cockroaches. They scurry away. So let's focus what you have on what you feel is about to happen, what could happen, and what you feel needs to be done to precipitate a destruction of these possible scenarios.
Boy, that's a mouthful, Roger. But
well, I only got 15 minutes.
Okay, first of all, what I will do is this. Thank you for being in the 5% of the last open and true radio media stations. Okay, 95% will not carry me. They simply will not carry me and my message. Okay, Google has specifically stated that none of their stations that they control, and they control a lot, will carry me because of what I just told your listeners. All right, and guess who owns Google? The CIA.
But I don't understand why, because a lot of what you're saying, if people would do a little digging, is available.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of it, but a lot of it. You just put the pieces together because you actually lived this stuff.
For 3 decades, I was in this business. I know what I'm talking about, and it's just this simple, is we are in a position right now for another coup. If you don't want to see the endless wars go on, and these phony baloney terrorist attacks, what a bunch of nonsense. Yeah, my grandmother even knows that ISIS is run and owned by America. All right, the Liebermans. Oh my goodness, the Clintons. Okay, the McCains. All right. Funny how we seem to gloss over the fact that ISIS, who is terrorizing the whole world right now, seems to be exactly the opposite. All right. I knew it wasn't the case when an American general was captured, okay, as an ISIS member, and an Israeli general was captured, and I watched an American Apache provide air cover for a shipment of trucks to ISIS. Okay, we've been fed a line of nonsense, people. It's about time it was over. Yes, Donald Trump needs to completely purge and reform the intelligence apparatus. It is not. The apparatus right now, as it stands, is designed for corporate profits, maximizing corporate profits wherever they may be.
I have a question for you. I have a very vital question for you, okay? Because there have been reports Okay, and I would lend I would lend a little bit of my credibility to the fact that a lot of these are a lot more than just rumors. But Donald Trump has literally hired a huge and extremely professional mercenary force to protect both him and his family because he is aware of some of what you say, and I would say a lot more than what we would expect people know he's aware of. But that he has literally, okay, hired a mercenary force, some of which are Soviet mercenaries, or not, excuse me, Russian mercenaries, but he has hired a mercenary force to protect his life and the lives of his family because of this.
That's the best thing that he could do. I'll tell you that for free. Just ask the Kennedy family when in horror they watched the Secret Service peel off of the presidential parade with Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy in the car and watch the Secret Service peel off and go their different directions, leaving the motorcade completely unprotected. All right. So what does that tell you? It tells me that Donald Trump, he is a realist. He better move quickly with his realism. He better acknowledge this right now. All right, because the powers that be, they are in shock, and that's the time to deal with them when they're in shock. If you let them sit there and regroup, they will blow his head off. It's just that simple. And yes, Russian security is a whole lot different than American security. In Russian security, you not only don't have to worry about finding a new job, but you better figure out how you're going to get out of the gulag. Okay, if you survive the interrogation process about why you let a head of state be assassinated. All right, what happens with the Secret Service? Nothing. Nothing happened. Nobody was fired. Nobody was fired even when they had 9/11 hit. Everybody was promoted in the business. And by the way, the agency is not going to have something called copper green. Copper green. I want everybody to look that up. Copper green. They're not going to tolerate having any interference in the running of copper green, which is basically enforced by something called Blackwater, who worked for, oddly enough, Hillary Clinton. Okay, Blackwater is enforcing the tenets of this group called Copper Green. 127 countries are under control now by Copper Green. Okay, this is something that I learned when I was in Iraq, and it was initiated in Iraq. The test bed was Abu Ghraib prison, and it is now one of the major forms of revenue for our government, and it's a major form of revenue for the agency.
Well, for most people listening again, and I just like to throw these facts in because you sparked them in me. For anybody who doesn't understand, there are 194 nations or countries on this planet. Today, the United States has either overtly or covertly military or militarized forces in over 170 of them. Stop and think about what I just said. 53 cents out of every dollar collected in taxes goes to pay for military or military supported programs in this nation. And we have a overt or covert military or militarized presence in over 170 out of 194 nations on the planet. Let's talk about empire, Greg.
I think you just did, Roger.
Yeah.
That describes it. All right. 100. I know, and I'm probably dated on my information, but when I filed charges to try to stop the torture at Abu Ghraib, since I was the medic having to repair the damage, and it wasn't kinder and gentler interrogation, nor was it something called enhanced interrogation techniques, EIT. No, it was called brutal, sadistic torture that was ordered by somebody named Donald Rumsfeld. I want anybody, that hears your show to call in and tell you, Roger, that they think that Donald Rumsfeld is a really kinder and gentler man. that was in charge of our.
Wait a minute.
I
This is
calling to say that.
this is the
Okay?
guy that the day before 9/11 stood up and said that almost $3 trillion was missing and couldn't be found from the military budget. And then the next day, 9/11 happens, and all of the records that could have been gone through to trace these funds were mysteriously destroyed in those attacks. Oh, give me a freaking break. That's the Donald Rumsfeld you're talking about, right?
Yes, that is, as a matter of fact. And whatever happened a few weeks ago to the 6.5 trillion that just went missing? All right, folks, we have got another doom and gloom impending massive terrorist attack on your doorstep because it makes money. 100,000 millionaires were made from Afghanistan and Iraq. And we've got 7 wars, okay, that they're not even telling the American public about now, okay, that everybody's financing. And by the way, I think it's actually higher. I've heard, Roger, for every person in America that makes 100,000 or less, their tax dollars go directly, every single dollar, not 57 cents, but every single dollar goes to the Pentagon if you make under 100,000, which is, that's me. That's everybody else I know.
I wouldn't discount that. I wouldn't. But the actual statistics, and you've got to go by, we're going by GAO statistics, and that's government, so how much can you trust that? But what they state is that 53 cents out of every tax dollar goes to either military or military related. What you need to understand is there are a lot of millionaires. They make up the other 47% of each tax dollar. But it's people like you and me that are below that $100,000 mark that make up the 53 cents. So you're probably right. All of our money is going directly towards military or military related programs.
And remember, okay, this is something that seems to gloss over everybody, okay, and they're thinking, Iraq, okay, yeah, it had weapons of mass destruction that George H.W. Bush sold, okay, at a profit. The Bush family doesn't donate, okay, weapons of mass destruction, okay, because they're concerned about a country's welfare. No, they sell those to make money, all right? So I would really appreciate everyone going to my court case and seeing the other issues that I name, okay, in my court case, like the Operation Shell Game, all right? Surprise, one of my sources in Iraq was an Egyptian lawyer who said, yes, you people in America have to be the stupidest people the whole world has ever seen, all right? The issue of oil is just this. Everybody thinks Saudi Arabia produces the largest amount of oil, okay? This war that we just fought, that people are still dying in, by the way, that we lost close to 15,000 soldiers in, by the way, it was something like this. Iraq has 4 times the amount of sweet oil, okay? That's low sulfur oil. 4 times the amount of Saudi Arabian oil, all right? Iraq has that, okay? You'll never hear that anywhere else, but guess what?
I would, but I want to, you sparked another one of these facts from me. What most people don't understand is it's about oil, but it's also about massive amounts of control. Because what most people in this country don't understand is that the United States has the largest oil reserves on the planet. As a matter of fact, the oil reserves in the United States, the known oil reserves in the United States, are 10 times the amount of all of the other reserve oil that's in reserve on the planet combined. There are close to 5, some people say as many as 7 trillion barrels of oil 1,000 feet down just at the southern eastern portion of the Rockies, and it has never been tapped. We're going after everybody else's. The reason for that, world dominance. And you've got about 2 minutes to do a wrap up, my friend. Get out any really good sterling points you need and give us a quick summary.
My point being is I do not want to see Donald Trump terminated. I don't want to see another death by misadventure. All right. He is at a critical point in our history where he can make the difference. And the whole issue that he can make the difference is no new laws have to be made. What has to be done is to rebuild, reconstruct what we already have in this country. We already have great laws. We already have a political structure that is next to none. All right. What he has to do is rebuild what has been dismantled by these robber barons like the Bush family. All right. Who's done more to dismantle the integrity and honor of this country than any single entity on the face of the earth in history. All right. Donald Trump can change that now. And I just told him the main concerns, and I want to put those out there, but there's no time. He needs to dismantle the intelligence agencies, get rid of the Bush thugs and mercenaries, and rebuild this country in the original form that it was set out to be.
All right. In other words,
the best, and it always will be.
We need to get back to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. All right, look, I don't want to say I enjoyed this because nobody should ever enjoy having a discussion like this, but I do appreciate the fact that you could put the pieces together. There's so much of this that you've talked about that I am aware of, but I didn't live through a lot of this. I was like in the other room. You were in the room where all of this was going on. I worked with the DOD for, basically 3 decades as well, and the government, but I worked on weapons systems. So I have a totally different discussion that you and I will get into someday, and I'm sure that will make another good show. Let me tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and having this discussion. We're at the end of the hour, so let me tell everybody that's listening, take this information and take it seriously. We are at this point in this country right now where more Americans are awake than I ever remember. I was born in 1954. Okay, I have watched the decline of America, the intentional knocking America to her knees. It has been stated by the elitists who control and pull all of the strings that Greg is talking about that the United States must be brought to its knees before any global governance can be sustained, because we are the cowboys of the world. And this is it. We are in the crosshairs. There is an attempted coup in place. The only thing that will prevent this is a massive amount of Americans wide awake and saying, you better not. Anybody who forgets, there are between 350 and 500 million guns in private hands in the United States. We constitute the largest militarized force the planet has ever seen. There is no nation or group of nations on the planet that has anywhere near as many guns as are in private hands in this country. Am I promoting violence? I never will. What I am telling you is you must be awake. You must be aware. We are at a point in history where the next level of tyranny will go well beyond anything we've experienced to this time. I want to thank you very much, Greg. I really do. I always appreciate talking with you, and we've got to do another one soon, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it, Roger.
All right, so for everybody listening, this has been the Liberty Beacon Special, brought to you by TLB TV and the Liberty Beacon Project. We wish you all a pleasant day, and I would say sweet dreams, but after a show like this, you're probably not going to have them. Have a good day.
Thank you, Roger.